What's up, guys? Chasing up the New Age Revolution down here in the cave for another episode of Whatever Happened To. That's right, we're bringing it back. Is it the official kickoff of Whatever Happened To Season 2? Sure, let's call it that. Whatever Happened To Season 2 starts tonight. And the topic was has come to me a few different ways. First of all, it's a topic suggested by one of you guys. And so I put it on the list, and it was going to be something that we discuss. But some recent events, including some events tonight, caused me to do the topic right now. And I'll tell you the events. The other day, when I was, doing one of my return videos, and I brought you outside and I showed you the patio. And I showed you the tree stump that I am now using as like a grilling station, right? Doing some chopping and some seasoning on this log, and I also screwed in some hooks, so I'm hanging my grill accessories on the log. And I told you the story of the stump, that the stump was actually saved from my childhood home, that I just coincidentally and very luckily happened to be driving past as I stalk and creep on my former house, and they had cut down the trees in the front yard, and one of them had a very thick base, and we used that tree as second base while we played kickball at 8, 9, and 10 years old, daily. So I rescued that stump. It's like the greatest thing in my collection. I mean, who gets to say that they have a tree stump from their childhood home? Who's in the right place at the right time? I mean, like, brush pickup in my neighborhood is once a week. So that tree was, it's a couple towns over, but I assume that brush pickup is weekly. And so had I not driven past the house at that very moment, the tree would have been ground up into, wood chips. But anyway, it got me thinking about kickball and the how much time we spent outside. And then coming home tonight, I've been draining the water off of our pool cover, and I was going to open the pool this week, but it's supposed to rain a lot tomorrow, and I didn't want to just put more water on the cover and drain it off again. So I impromptu, I said, I'm going to take the cover off the pool real quick. So, the whole family's out there pulling the cover, and then it gets a sack of water, and I have to jump in the pool and push the sack of water off the cover so it doesn't fall in the pool and get it dirty, and that's great. And that led to the children wanting to jump in the pool with me. Like 60 degrees, freezing cold water. It's up to like it's like 2.5 feet of water. And they're just out there having a blast, splashing around in a very cold, unchemicalized pool. But blue, it was blue. And it just got me thinking. It got me thinking, guys. Whatever happened to playing outside? That's right. Whatever happened to playing outside, to kids playing outside? Now, I know that kids play outside, silly. It's not a completely lost concept. My kids play outside. But I do not see the same joy on their faces while they're playing outside that I know was on my face when I was playing outside back in the day. I think playing outside kind of ranks a little lower on the to-do list of my children and most children, I assume. And parents for years have been complaining about kids indoors and all the electronics, and nobody uses their imagination anymore. And we've seen that with the evolution of action figures. You know if the action figure doesn't have 60 points of articulation, if the wrist joint doesn't move on an action figure, then kids are like, what am I supposed to do with this? When obviously our action figures, our wrestling figures specifically, were just hunks of rubber that you could like kind of squeeze their arms together a little bit if you pushed really hard. And we created an entire universe of fun. But that was indoors. I'm talking about outdoors. And I don't think that kids enjoy the same outdoor play that us 80s kids did. And so tonight I want to talk about some of my fondest memories of playing outdoors. My memories kick in as a kid around age 8. I mean, I think that's fairly standard for when adults can have some memory and like detailed memory. I think we all remember like little clips of 5 or 6, but our memories, our chronological memories, or memories that we can remember details of an event at about 8. And I certainly remember growing up in that house where I saved the tree, and all of the time that I spent outdoors and how much I looked forward to being outdoors. The first, we moved into that house in the off season of outdoors, not Christmas, but like cold. We moved in let's say February. Or February or March, right? When, everybody was kind of holed up indoors and nobody was really getting out. But I remember the first nice day, I was probably in that neighborhood for about 2 months. And I didn't know anybody yet. And I remember, and this is very, very 100% truthful memory. My bicycle was in the rafters of the garage. And probably had a couple of flat tires. And my dad wasn't home when I wanted to go outside. And if your dad's not home and your bike's in the rafters with 2 flat tires, you're screwed. You're not, there's no way you're even going to think of asking your mom to get the bike down from the rafters and possibly blow up the tires, right? That's never going to happen. That's a dad job. Forget it. You're not even going to ask her. So I hopped on my big wheel at about 8 or 9 years old. I think 8. I would say 8. 8 or 9 years old, and started going down the street looking for kids. And I was riding my big wheel down the street, and there was a kid outside, and he had like a little cousin with him. Like the cousin was probably like 6, and I pulled up on my big wheel, and this kid was 8 also or so. And I think by that point, big wheels and 8-year-olds, you don't have the big wheel. Or at least that was this kid's attitude. And so my first introduction to the neighborhood kids was getting made fun of and laughed at because I was on my big wheel. And, so I rode down to their house, like 3 houses down. We had a little confrontation, and I, hightailed it back home on my big wheel, got the bike out the very next day, and me and that kid were like best friends while I lived in the neighborhood. Andy Watkins was his name. Hopefully he doesn't sue me. I'm sure he's not watching this, but that was the kid. And we met as I was made fun of for riding the big wheel. But Liam's 9. Liam's 9 today, and there would be no way that he would get on his bike and cruise 10 or 12 houses down and look for kids. Like that's not a thing. That wouldn't happen today. Was my mom right behind me? No. I don't even think she knew where I went. Because that's just how it was. You were on your own. And as an 8-year-old, I knew what I had to do. I knew what my mission was. My mission was to make a friend, was to go find kids. Like, that was my mission. I knew what I was going to do. I was going to knock on doors and say, hey, do you have any kids? Like, literally, that's what we did back then. You knocked on it. If you moved into a new neighborhood, you knocked on the door and you said, do you have any kids? And then it was on. And then you had best friends. And my God, the memories of playing outside. Kickball was huge. Kickball was an Olympic sport in my neighborhood, and so in addition to Andy, the kid that made fun of me, there was an older kid across the street, and back then that didn't matter either. I was 9, and this older kid was probably 12, maybe 13. But he was right out there with us. He was right out there playing and having a blast. The kids across the street, another group of kids across the street, were driving age. But I remember doing stuff with them too. I remember like jumping ramps with them. Let me check that. What does that say? Okay. I remember jumping bike ramps, but I'll tell you about that. So like all ages combined at some point. Now the 16-year-olds were also off smoking their wacky weed and cruising in their Chevy Novas or whatever they did. But occasionally, we'd all get together, and it was fine. It was great. It was wonderful. A nighttime hide and seek, or back then it was called Ghost in the Graveyard. Nighttime hide and seek was called Ghost in the Graveyard. And we'd get the big kids to play. The big kids would be into it, and they would play. So we ended up with maybe 3 main guys in that neighborhood, and then a couple of older kids, and it was on. It was on. Kickball was a staple. It was always me and my sisters, playing against at least 2 or 3 other kids. So it was usually 3-on-3. It might have been 2-on-2. But it was in the front yard. The bases were, a light pole, a lamp pole, a tree, and then like a gas. We had there must have been a gas line underground, and we had the cap, like the gas cap, was in our yard. Right? It was in the ground. It wasn't sticking out, but it was there. You knew it. Like you couldn't mow over it with your lawnmower, or else you'd hit it. And that was third base. The little gas cap was third base. So the light pole, the tree, and the gas cap was third base. And that's why it's so awesome that I have that tree now on my grill or on my patio, because that was second base. So it was kickball. It was kickball, which always resulted in arguments, always resulted in fights about out, safe, always. Because, with kickball, you're not like you have to hit the other player with the ball, right? You only have a pitcher and an outfielder, so you're not like you got to hit the other kid. And so there was always a lot of bang plays at first, and it was I'm screaming safe, they're screaming out, the best, the best. And if you were lucky to have a couple of teams, then you could have a tournament. If you had 3 teams, then the tournament was on, and it was just like you got winner. And then that's the champion. And that was just the greatest. And we never had an official kickball, right? Those maroon, thick balls that make the thump sound when you catch them and they break your fingers. And we never had one of those. We never had one. So it was always like a Nerf soccer ball, I remember, was usually the kickball. Waterlogged, because we would leave it outside and it would rain, and then the Nerf ball would just become this concrete. So great. Kickball was huge. Another lost art, and my kids have never really expressed any interest in this concept, but forts and the 80s go together, hand in hand. I was always looking to construct a fort of some kind. And it was never made out of wood. There were never nails involved. it was usually just like a pre-existing structure, right? The best day of the year was when the parents would get a new refrigerator or something, and the box would be in the garage because that would be a fort, and I would cut windows in it, I'd cut a door in it, and it was the fort. I once made a fort out of a pickup truck cab, right? Or cap, whatever they call them, those things that are on the back of a pickup truck. For some reason, we had one in our front yard once, which is sort of the ultimate like white trash symbol to have a pickup truck cap in your front yard. But we did. I think my dad was holding on to something. We didn't have a truck. We didn't have a pickup truck, mind you, but we had the pickup truck cap in the back in our front yard. And it was there for like 3 weeks. I think we were holding it for somebody or something. I don't know. But I crawled in there, and that was my fort. And of course, you have to personalize the fort. So I would hang up like wrestling pinups. I'd put a blanket in there. I'd get some snacks, and boom, fantasies of sleeping overnight in my fort would all just enter my head. And then if you actually got your hands on some wood, that was magical. And I remember like every kid that we would play with, every kid in the neighborhood would want to be involved in this fort. And we never actually accomplished a real fort, right? We never actually, like a tree house, forget about it. That was like kid fantasy back then. Like you weren't getting that actually done. And a fort with like walls and a door and maybe a roof, never going to happen in a million years, right? Well, that was all the fantasy. That was something we were building up to. But you ended up just laying in a truck cab, and that was your fort. And those were the greatest times ever, unmatched, unbeatable times. You've all heard the stories about how, we were free. You leave the house at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you don't come back until your mom is screaming out the door. And I always had one of those moms who, even at a young age, her ability to scream and beckon us was horribly embarrassing. She had a horrible screech to call us, but we heard her, and I don't know how they were okay with that back then, because now today, there would be no way, even at 9 years old, I'm not letting Liam out of my sight, and if he's going down the street to like play with a kid in his backyard, I'm going too, and I'm just sitting there watching them. I don't know what it is, I don't know why we don't, why those times are gone, but at a very, very young age, I was riding my bike way further than I probably should have. We lived off of a busy road. We didn't live on a busy road, but there was a busy road that led to our street. And, there was a convenience store about half mile away. And I would ride my bike up to that convenience store at 9 years old. And I would get candy and I would play, I'll never remember the video game, but they had like one arcade game in the convenience store and I would play. And, I'm riding down a busy street and whatever. Playing outside with friends, when I would go to a friend's house, their parents definitely didn't want us in the house, and we definitely didn't want to be in the house. So we would be outside. I have played, one-on-one basketball is fine. That's easy. But I have figured out how to play one-on-one football. I have played one-on-one baseball. And none of these things make any sense. But we made them make sense, and they were awesome. And we had a blast doing them. So yeah, one-on-one football and one-on-one baseball. Not easy to figure out how to do, but we would do it. I remember a very interesting twist on hide and seek that we would do. We called it the chalkboard game. And we had a chalkboard, and we would draw the clue of where we were hiding. Right, so the more abstract you could think, you could really get creative with the drawing, right? If you're hiding in the garage, you don't just draw a picture of a garage and you in there. I'm in here. You have to think outside the box, right? You gotta be really creative with your drawing because you don't want to give away where you are. So we would do that, and that was the chalkboard game. Right? It was a take on hide and seek. And like I said, my kids play outside today. They run around the backyard, but it's not there, right? They don't have the same joy. I saw that joy tonight when I let them climb in the pool. Now that's a very I wanted to create that memory. Dad's cleaning the pool. He's lifting the big cover off the pool. It's like 2 feet of water. It's been closed all year. It's 60 degrees in the pool. And they're hopping in with me, and they're having the time of their life. I'm doing the dad thing where I'm skimming the leaves off the pool, and they're just splashing around. They got out. They got one of the boats, like the floaty boats. They're playing around in 2 feet of water, and hopefully, if they're anything like me, their memories will kick in, and they will remember, jumping in 2 feet of water with me, because other than that, I don't think they get the same joy that we did as kids playing outside. It was the greatest times of our lives, and there's an extremely sad Facebook meme thing. I don't know what they are, but there's a picture of a bunch of kids just hanging out, whatever, and the caption is, at one point, I'll get it wrong, but like, at one point, you went outside and played with your friends for the very last time, and none of you knew that. None of you knew that it was the very last time. And if I think about that, my head starts to hurt. Because there was some point in time back in 1980-something that I played my last game of front yard kickball, and I had no idea it was my final game. Anyways, think about that and jot down some of your favorite outdoor playtime memories as we talk about whatever happened to kids playing outside. See y'all next time. Go play outside. Good night now.